Hey, this is Mark Stellingworth with Brigadoon Radio. Today I'm here with Deloris Wilson, who's the founder and chief strategist at AXL, as well as the head of strategy and innovation at Beacon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Your talk was fantastic.
Thank you.
And it really resonated with me. My wife is a serial entrepreneur, and she's got 2 businesses already. She's working on a 3rd. Her first business was a wine shop and a furniture store, which she repurposed the furniture. And we were fortunate enough in Hartsville to have this, this competition. She built her business plan. She got got this money and basically covered her rent for a year and afforded her the opportunity. Yeah, it's a great program. But she works like crazy, taking in shipments, working on the furniture itself, and she works 80 hours a week on this business, But it never fails that, at the end of the day, somebody will come up and say, "Wow, I've had a great experience here, and it's a really fantastic place. But where's the owner, and who is he?" And it just drives her crazy, and it really highlights the fact that we're leaving $4 trillion on the table because we're not embracing female entrepreneurs.
And it's sad that this story is a common one.
Yes.
And honestly, it's something that I've even experienced both as an entrepreneur and as an entrepreneur. I'm in a boardroom and someone expects a male leader to speak on behalf of the company. And so I'm bypassed. No one shakes my hand. They think I'm a secretary when actually I'm the owner and operator. And this really is rooted in a long-standing inequitable society that's built on stereotypes that has benefited some. But really what we have to understand, and what I was talking about today, and I'm so glad it resonated with you, is that this is beyond a conversation about doing what feels good, doing what's right. If you want to talk about profits and maximizing the economy and recognizing the economic potential that we have, you have got to understand what we have been missing out on for so long. It was only 30 years ago that in order for me to even get a business loan, I needed a male co-signer to join me.
Right.
How insulting to my ability and intelligence. Yet 30 years later, we are still strongholds of the economy, but could be doing so much more if that $4 trillion blind spot was closed. Something that, and I encourage folks to really look into, is Morgan Stanley's recent report that really surveyed kind of the investment landscape, both from VC angel investors and loan officers, as to why are they not investing in women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. Kind of one of the interesting things is they didn't believe there was actually a problem. They're like, oh, well, they're actually receiving the amount of capital that they deserve.
Speaking of blind spots, right?
Right, speaking of blind spots, but the facts tell us that 0.2% of venture financing has gone to women of color. Less than 2% has gone to women. We know women are half as likely to apply for bank loans, start businesses with half as capital as men. The stats are on the table. And so it's kind of a mix of implicit bias. There's a mix of access to deal flow, and then also a misunderstanding of the markets. And all of this is kind of permeating around these social perceptions of a woman's role and a woman's opportunity. And so, I'm really empowered to work with an organization and to work in a space where we're advocating for inclusion of women and people of color in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, such that as we're moving towards this future of work, as our society is rapidly changing, that we're not leaving people behind.
Well, and in your talk, you also mentioned, access is so incredibly important, but it was also to disabuse the notion of the perceived risk. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that I thought that was most telling. And I thought that Morgan Stanley document would probably be very helpful in that regard.
Absolutely.
But you're also taking it into your own hands with Beacon. So
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about Beacon.
Yeah, so while we see that there's obviously a major problem that's going to take some time for us to change kind of social perceptions around how they think of women or how we think of women-owned businesses, there are things that we can be doing right now as a community to really turn inwards to help one another. And that really kind of sets the foundation for Beacon, the DC Women Founders Initiative. We are once a grassroots program. We were started around a dinner table of concerned women in DC, recognized these gaps that women entrepreneurs face and wanted to do something about it. We brought on some institutional partners, Google, Georgetown, and the DC Mayor's Office, to help support us, not only financially, but also in terms of capacity, in terms of their reach and understanding of DC, so we could really kind of get a better sense of the landscape and address some of those gaps. So Beacon operates around 4 primary pillars: increasing access to capital, providing resources and support, generating new business opportunities, and of course, inspiring the next generation, because we've got to make sure that the girls coming up after us know that entrepreneurship is an option for them. We do this in a number of ways. We run what is now the largest directory of women-owned businesses and resources in the district, where we're able to connect women entrepreneurs to one another for mentorship, to jointly bid on contracts, to sell to one another, but also to connect to investors. We also run a grant program where we fund ecosystem builders. So we actually look for other women in DC that are building programs or opportunities that can open up markets or access for women entrepreneurs. So we're kind of like combating this issue of funding women in general, because we are funding women, but we're not funding women-led companies. We're funding women-led programs that can then benefit other companies. That's kind of like the thesis around ecosystem building. It's like everything is connected. You can't address entrepreneurship just by looking at capital, just by looking at resources, just by looking at policy. These things, it was a system that has been built and constructed and perpetuated that has caused these inequities. So it takes a systemic approach to solve them.
It's a comprehensive long-term plan to address
Absolutely.
them. It's really fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank
All
you.
right, so you've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro.
I've climbed part of Mount Kilimanjaro. I've got to be honest. So I climbed a 2-day summit.
Well, you're a lot closer than I would probably never.
A 2-day climb, which was phenomenal. This was about 2 years ago. I was on a 6-month hiatus. I needed to take some time to just breathe, reflect, and recalibrate. So spent some time in Mount Kilimanjaro in the Moshi region. And so did a climb. And what was amazing is that our guide taught me this amazing phrase, pole pole, which means slow and steady. And he would repeat this as we climbed, and we climbed and we climbed and got tired, and our legs are just, because I didn't really train before this. I was just like exhausted.
Awesome.
But this statement, slow and steady, is like the only way you're going to get to the top or to our stopping point is for you to approach this at a slow and steady pace. And that's just something that I constantly remind myself of, not only in my work, because I wear a lot of hats, and like in order to not be burnt out, I have to be slow and steady, but also in this long-term strategy and this long-term approach to solving these issues in women's entrepreneurship. It's going to take time.
Right.
And we see small gains every day. And to be honest, when I see a woman entrepreneur in my office and I'm able to make a connection or just give her some feedback or just let her know she's not alone, that's a small win. But when I see these major wins, such as like a humongous fund like we have created now in DC, the Inclusive Innovation Fund, that's specifically targeting women and minority founders, or groups like Backstage Capital, whose investment thesis is only surrounding those groups that have been underestimated. Yeah. I see those big wins, and I think we'll see those more and more, but it's going to take time. So slow and steady is the approach that I'm using.
Amazing. Well, all right. So last question. Any book, album, or television program you would recommend to our viewers out there?
Absolutely. So I'm a huge fan of Londrell. He has an album called Eternal Sunshine. It's on iTunes. It's not a typical album. It's actually a mix of positive affirmations, meditative statements, and sayings kind of along this melody that's really catchy. I put it on in the morning, every morning. Usually kind of get through most of the album by the time I leave the house, but it just puts me in a different state of being. And being in a stressful environment and being overworked sometimes, it's great to have that to reset every day and make sure you're approaching the day in the best way possible. So I absolutely recommend.
Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.
And it was a great talk, and I hope you come back.
Thank you. Absolutely. We'll certainly be back in the future.
All right. See you later.